let's do it. So this is going to be the 5 rules of 360 leadership. So 360 leadership is one of our company tenets. Basically, it says that anybody in our company could be a leader. You don't need the title of leadership to actually hold the person to the left and to the right of you accountable. So we're going to talk about the 5 rules of 360 leadership. And then, like I said, we'll dive specifically into one aspect that we're going to talk about today as well that I think you guys will find a lot of benefit on. All right, this is pretty staggering. Honestly, it's kind of depressing as well, but it bleeds into exactly why we're talking about this subject today. So check out these stats, y'all. 50% of marriages end in divorce. 85% of people worldwide are not engaged in their work. 70% of the people at the end of their life have regret about not pursuing their dreams. And 73% of people over the age of 20 are either obese or overweight. That is insane, right? These statistics here are depressing, staggering, insane, jaw-dropping. What the heck is going on, right? Why is this the case? Well, the reason this is the case is because the world lacks true leadership. Now, this next slide, it may trigger some people. I'm not trying to make it trigger people. I'm trying to prove a point here, right? The world lacks true leadership. These individuals are not going to fix the problem, right? As much as we think that they are, and maybe they have some sort of an impact, but the impact goes a lot greater than the people who are at the top of the food chain in terms of CEOs and the people who are at the top of the food chain in terms of controlling our government, right? The actual problem here is that boots on the ground, right? Americans in our country, boots on the ground, everyday Americans lack the skill of leadership. Right, that's exactly why these statistics are the way they are. And the unfortunate part is most Americans think that these people are going to save them, but the truth is that they're not. So, what can we do, right? We're obviously coaches, right? Coaches really is just another word for leadership, right? What can we do to solve this problem? What can we do to help some of these statistics that I think we all want to contribute to turning around? Probably more specifically, the 73% of people over the age of 20 being obese or overweight. Well, what we can do is we can build this very skill of leadership, right? And more specifically, we can become leaders that create other leaders. And that should definitely be a part of y'all's program, right? It should definitely be a part of your program. Yes, you want to help individuals lose weight, but you also want to give them the skill of leadership as well. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about it. The first thing here is to define leadership. What exactly is this word leadership? Right? Leadership is not a title, right? There is a lot of people out there that have the title of leadership that aren't actually leaders. Maybe, I don't know how they climbed the ladder and achieved that position, but when they get the position, there's a large percentage of people that really truly aren't leaders, right? And that's why I believe so much in 360 leadership, where it doesn't require a title to actually go out and cause an impact or to change somebody's life. Really, if we're just defining leadership in simple terms, leadership is the skill of influence. It is your ability to influence another individual. Now, there's obviously individuals who have that skill who can do it in a negative way. There's also individuals who do it in a positive way as well. We're talking about the positive way here today, not the negative way. All right, so let's break down these rules. Rule number one, if we are going to be a leader for our people, if we are going to be a leader for, and when I say our people, I'm talking about anybody who you have, anybody who you can have an impact on, right? Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your wife, your clients, right? It should be important to you to develop this skill to be able to influence those individuals in a positive way. All right, rule number one, it starts with self leadership. Okay, what is self leadership? Very easy. Your ability to lead yourself, right? Your ability to lead yourself in all aspects of life, right? Through your business, through your marriage, right? Through your health and fitness, through your mindset, right? But it goes a little bit deeper than that. If we are going to be viewed as a leader in the eyes of other individuals, we have to have a life others want to live. Now, I'm not talking about having fancy cars and a big house. That's not what I'm talking about, right? Somebody needs to be able to look at your life and say, man, they have a great marriage, right? I look up to their marriage, right? Their marriage is aspiring. I aspire to have their marriage, right? It could be your physique, right? It could be the way that you treat yourself, right? The way that you make decisions, right? The way that you operate your business, right? Others need to say, wow, I want a little bit more of that. All right. People want to be led by you only if they respect you, which comes from respecting yourself first, right? This means that we can't be one dimensional. Right? What do I mean by one dimensional? One dimensional, I mean, you can't just be good at one thing, right? I actually had this problem, I would say, for a while where I only focused on getting really good at business. And guess what? It led to obvious success, right? You know, doing more than 8 figures in revenue by the age of 28, right? A lot of that is because I decided I want to be one dimensional. Well, guess what? I don't want to be one dimensional anymore, right? It's not really fulfilling. Do I want to continue to grow my business? Absolutely. Do I want to be the best CEO I can? Absolutely. But I also have other goals and aspirations now as well, right? And if you want to become a leader of other individuals, right, you can't just be one dimensional. Now, this also requires you, if we're going to become a leader, and if becoming a leader requires self-leadership, and if it requires you to have a life that others want, right? It also means that you can't be afraid to share your life, right? And that's really what your social media platform should be, right? Social media, basically, if we're defining it here in a nutshell, should be you showing people the life that you are living that they want, right? They should be able to look at your social media and say, "Yep, that's the life that I want." Right? That should be the goal of posting content, is showing people that you have the thing that they desire, right? For you guys more in particular, it's health and fitness, right? And if we take it a step deeper, there's different layers and aspects of health and fitness that people want, but you have to be really good at communicating that you have that. Okay. Which means that we can't be afraid to share our life. Okay. This does not mean perfection. All right. Great leaders are always a work in progress. People just need to be aligned with your priorities and path. Okay. So when I say sharing your life, right, don't think like, oh man, like I need to be so aspirational in this one area of my life that I need to be perfect. No, right. A lot of the people that we actually look up to in terms of a leadership saying, like, wow, I want to follow that person, right? Because when they click the follow button, that's really what they're saying is like, oh, I want to be led by that person. I want to follow that person. A lot of the people that we do that for, right, they're not perfect, right? They don't have it all figured out, and they openly communicate that. But we align with two very important things. We align with their priorities and we align with their path, right? Maybe an individual, maybe they had a rough go in their marriage, right? And they make a post and they say, you know what, I did go through a divorce. This is what I'm committing to, right? We align with sorry. Okay. What? No, you threw me off. Anything else? You're good? Okay. All right. Where was I? Yeah, just because they had a failed marriage doesn't mean that we're not going to follow them, right? We're going to align with what is now, what they are communicating is now their priorities and their path. All right. But like I said, it doesn't mean that we need to be perfect, but it does mean that we need to be consistent, right? People admire consistency, right? I heard this from Ed Milet. I want to share it with you guys here, the dripping faucet mentality. Okay, this is exactly how you should be living your life and how you should view it, right? You want to be exactly like a dripping faucet, right? We don't want to be like a faucet where we just turn it on, it all comes out at once, we turn it off, right? We want to be the dripping faucet, drip, drip, drip. We keep pushing forward, right? We're relentless in that aspect, right? We got to be consistent with our self leadership if people are going to look up to us. All right, rule number two, you must be a source of stability. This is the one that we're going to go deeper on. Now, we're going to circle back to this one. I'm going to complete all five, and then we're going to circle back to this one. But you must be a source of stability. If you're going to be a leader of your clients, a leader of other individuals, you have to be viewed as a source of stability. So, what does that mean? All right. If you want to lead others, you got to be stable through good times and through bad times. Now, this one's a contradiction. Okay, and I learned this in leadership. I thought this was really cool when I learned this. So I'm excited to share this one with you guys. But leaders often have it backwards. Okay. When things are good, right? Usually they're, doing all the applauses, pats on the back, everybody's doing amazing. Right. And when times are bad, usually leaders are like, they're coming down on their people, like, hey, we got to be better. XYZ, you're doing this bad, that bad. Right. Most leaders have it backwards. It actually should be the opposite of that, right? Why? Because what we want to prevent is we want to prevent seasons of good followed by seasons of bad and just having good, bad, hot, cold, hot, cold. We don't want that. All right. So, how we can create stable results is doing the opposite. When things are good, sure, yes, you want to applaud your people. You want to let them know that they're doing a good job. You want to give them that recognition. But equally, that is exactly the time that we have to become more detailed. That is exactly the time that we have to become more accountable and hold them to a higher standard and challenge them to push for a higher standard as well. Why is that? Because if all we do is celebrate when they're doing good, guess what's going to happen? They're going to pull their foot off the gas, right? And that's when, it's going to be followed by a season of cold. Right now, the opposite is true when things are bad. When things are bad, instead of coming down on our team and saying, hey, we're sucking and making them feel bad, right? Kicking a horse while it's down or kicking a dead horse, right? Instead, we want to lean into the motivation and the support, right? So it's actually counterintuitive on what we are supposed to do. Okay. Now we're talking about here, you must be a source of stability. What do stable people do? Okay. How is somebody going to view you as an individual that is stable? All right. First and foremost, they make calculated decisions. Okay. That's actually the thing that we're going to go deeper on here today. I have 6 different decision making calculuses I'm going to share with you guys later on in the call. But they make calculated decisions. Stable people do. All right. They follow through consistently and unwaveringly. Okay, unwaveringly means in the face of adversity, right? When it's a shitstorm, right? They unwaveringly follow through consistently. Okay. They are rational and consider other perspectives. Okay. Stable people, right? They don't just fly off the seat of their pants, right? They're not so egotistical that they don't take in other perspectives, right? Stable people are rational and consider other perspectives when they're making a decision. All right. And last one here, you know what you're going to get from them, right? Stable people every single day, you know what they're going to get, right? We've all had bosses or people in our life where it's like, what version of Sally am I getting today? Like, am I getting the good version or am I getting the bad version, right? That person is not a leader, right? They're not a stable individual. Stable individuals, we know exactly what we're going to get from that person every single day. Sure, they might have a bad day here and there, right? But more times than not, they are consistent. Okay, rule number 3. If we are going to become leaders, we have to be really good at communication. This is the one out of all the 5 that I'm telling you guys today. This is the one that personally makes me the most uncomfortable. I don't know if it makes you the most uncomfortable, but I'm going to share this with you guys. Everybody here on this call is a motivational speaker, whether you like it or not, right? If you are leading other individuals, eventually when you guys have a team and you're leading staff, you're going to have to be a motivational speaker, right? You're going to have full team meetings where, I have full team meetings. I have 20 person staff, right? I have to deliver a talk, right? I have to get them inspired, right? I have to sometimes lay down the hammer, right? But the only way we could do that effectively is if we work on our communication. All right. It's something that I hated to hear, but hopefully you take this seriously, because if you do, right, and you do become a good communicator, leadership is going to become second half. Equally, beyond just becoming a good coach, right? Husband, wife, dad, mom, salesperson, coach, whatever. If we want to become more effective at any of those roles, communication is something that we should be looking into. Now, here's a good communication philosophy. All right. Heart, heart on your sleeve, direct with your mouth, wrap it with love. All right, great leaders always have their heart on the sleeve. Okay. Other people know what I actually think it's a good thing that other people know exactly what you're feeling, right? If you're holding back your feelings, right, you're not being transparent in that regard, I think that's actually bad leadership. Great leaders do have their heart on their sleeve, right? They know exactly where they stand with that individual, right? And that leader is not holding back from how they feel either, right? Because if we're open and honest about our feelings, right, then we can have a conversation to work through that if it's a bad thing. Obviously, if it's a good thing, it's good to wear your heart on your sleeve as well. But in the context of it being bad, right, then you can have a constructive conversation with that person to work through the problem, opposed to there being resentment and drama. Right. A lot of these going back to corporate from our conversation earlier, a lot of these corporate cultures suck because a lot of people build resentment because there's no communication on the shit that is on their mind. Okay. Now, this goes right into being direct with your mouth, but wrap it with love, right? We want to be direct in terms of leadership. We want to communicate and say exactly what's on our mind, but we want to wrap it with love. More in particular, we want to speak to the potential of the human being, right? Saying, hey, we might have messed up in this regard, right? But I see a lot in you, right? If we could fix up these things, I really think we can maximize your potential and you're going to crush it here, right? We got to wrap it with love. Okay. Next bullet point here in terms of being a good communicator: practice, practice, practice. Okay, I deliberately bring talks like this to these meetings. One, because I think obviously it's good information for you guys to hear, but two, it's an opportunity for me to improve my communication skills as well. Right. In NLCA in 2023, 2022, 2021, and 2020, I wasn't really giving talks like these. A lot of these group calls were more or less me popping on and answering your guys' questions, and then we leave. But this year I said, hey, I want to be a better communicator and I want to be able to actually get on these calls and deliver great information to our students. So I started practicing these things to you guys and equally also to our staff members as well. All right, last thing that I think can really help you become a good communicator here: prepare, know your material, don't try to be somebody else. All right, preparation. All right, obviously I took time to create this presentation, right? I took time to prepare exactly what I was going to say, right? Equally, I know my material. If I didn't know my material, I wouldn't be able to riff, I wouldn't be able to talk about it, right? And lastly, I'm not trying to be anybody else but myself. All right, rule number 4: if we are going to be great leaders for our people, we must be a fighter. All right, we must be a fighter. All right, check this out. When I heard this in one of my leadership trainings, it's something that stuck with me and it's something that I'm very cognizant of with my team. All right, at best, people will match 80% of your effort. Okay, you're the pace setter. As a leader, you're the pace setter. And you're probably like, Chad, I don't have any staff members. I'm not even talking about staff members. I'm talking about with your clients as well. You are the pace setter for your clients, right? If your clients aren't getting great results, you got to think like, man, maybe I just have to improve my leadership. Maybe I got to set the pace a little bit better, right? Because your people, once again, they're only going to match 80% of your effort at best, right? That's taking into account that you actually have good people, right? Good clients, right? There are some people who might match 50% of your best effort, right? So if you're showing up every day, right, and you're giving 50% of your best effort and they're matching 80% of your 50%, that means they're only giving 30%. Right. So we got to check ourselves before we do anything, right? We got to check ourselves before we send check-ins. We got to check ourselves before we're about to actually talk to the people that we are impacting, that we are influencing, because they're going to show up 80% of your best effort. Okay. You got to be the pace setter. All right, number 2, your resilience in pushing through adversity shows people what is possible, okay? Now, we can take this into many contexts. I think the most relevant one is for you guys is for your clients, right? Don't be afraid with your clients. Don't be afraid to show what you're going through, right? Don't be afraid to show the adversity that you're going through and the resilience that you have. Past in the past or current, right? Doesn't matter. You can tell a past story, you can tell something that's going on with you currently, right? But this shows them what's possible. It also shows that you're a fighter, and people want to fight for a fighter, right? And that's the last bullet point that I have here. People will fight for a fighter, fighting for something outside of themselves. Okay, the last part, we didn't talk about the last part, right? The last part here is people need to think that you're actually fighting for something greater than just growing your business, right? If people say like, oh man, like so and so, I can just tell like all they care about is signing more clients, just continuing to fill their roster. They're really not pouring into me at all, right? Like nobody's going to fight for that. But if they can tell that you're fighting for something that is outside of themselves, a cause that is bigger than just you and your business, guess what? They're going to show up for a person like that, right? On the day that they don't want to work out, they're going to show up and say, hey, I'll hit the gym for so and so today because I can tell that they actually give a shit. All right. So, rule number 4, you must be a fighter. All right. Rule number 5, you must show love, empathy, and care. A lot of the other rules that we talked about are more masculine traits. And sure, yes, I know there's a prototype leadership is all masculine. Sure, of course, but it's equally feminine as well. And actually, in fact, all of our leaders in NLCA are women. I'm the only male leader in terms of like people that have the title of it in NLCA, right? And I think females are fantastic, fantastic leaders. I've actually only ever had in my career only ever had one male on our leadership team. Otherwise, they've all been females, and that's because they're really good at this. Naturally, they're really good at this. Okay, us men on the call, maybe we have this, right? But I know at least for myself, I needed to work on this. Okay, you must show rule number 5, you must show love, empathy, and care. All right. So there's a great book for you guys to read on leadership is Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink. If you guys have read it, drop it in the chat if you haven't. Definitely make sure you purchase that. It should be on your wish list for sure. But basically, what he talks about is leadership is a dichotomy, right? Dichotomy, right? There's two opposing forces that we need to balance. Okay. Now, in the one in particular, what we're going to talk about here is you have leadership traits of drive, intensity, accountability, and fight, right? But if we lean too much into that, people are going to tighten up. All right. Some people might tighten up. It might be too much for them. They tighten up, they walk on eggshells, they're afraid to make a mistake, right? So and I've had that mistake because I tend to lean more on the drive, intensity, accountability, and fight side of things. And I've had staff members where they're afraid to make a mistake, right? Or they're afraid to talk to me. They're afraid to like open up and ask me questions or, admit when their things aren't going well. And that's not good either, right? It's impossible to lead if somebody's so buttoned up that they're afraid to have a conversation with you, right? So although drive and intensity, accountability, and fight for sure have a place in leadership, if we only lean into that, we run the risk of not connecting with our people, not getting feedback from our people, right? And not being able to effectively lead them. Okay. Now, the other side of the spectrum here, we got love, kindness, care, and compassion. If we lean too far in that direction, right, then there's going to be no rules and accountability and people in lack of details, and people are going to be making mistakes left and right. Right. So we got to strike a balance, right? We have to have the drive, the intensity, the accountability, and the fight, but we have to balance it with love and kindness, care, and compassion. Too far in either direction, there's negatives. Right in the middle, that's the sweet spot. Okay, so how do we show people that we care? Right? How do we show people that we care? The short list here, obviously, this list can go on forever, but the short list here, having conversations where you ask questions and listen with no agenda. All right, in a leadership position, often when we contact the people that we're leading, there's some form of agenda, right? Like, hey, I'm trying to get some information from you about XYZ project, or I'm trying to see how you're doing with your workout, right? See how you're doing with your macros. And we're talking about a client context here, right? But I challenge you guys as coaches slash leaders of your clients, have conversations with your clients where you ask questions and listen with no agenda. Meaning you don't care how they're working. And I'm not saying you don't care, but you don't care about how their workout went or their macros or what they eat for dinner. But you ask them questions about their family, right? You ask them questions about their kids. You ask them questions about what they're doing on Thanksgiving. You ask them questions that have no relevance to anything that you're supposed to be leading on, and you just listen, right? That shows people that you care. All right, number two, you show people that you care with your time, right? If you take time out of your day to do something that is inconvenient or perceived as inconvenient, right? That will show people that you love them, that you have empathy for them, that you care for them. All right. Another one is with your words, right? Praise and recognition. People will do more for recognition than they will for money. All right. One of the reasons why I think NLCA has a really good staff culture is we really focus on praise and recognition, right? For small things and for big things. But more importantly, we praise and recognize on things that have nothing to do with results. And what I mean by that is if one of our closers or DMers has a dominant week and they book a lot of calls or they close a lot of deals, right? Sure, we'll recognize them for that. But the things that we recognize for are character traits, right? So if somebody goes out of their way to do something that they weren't supposed to do, and it's a net positive for a client or a net positive for their community or just overall, just like, wow, that was great character, right? Those are the kinds of things that we shout people out for. All right. The last thing that you could do to show love, empathy, and care is surprises. The element of surprise is extremely special, right? One thing that I like to do, I try to do this once every 2 weeks, is I'll write a handwritten card for one of my staff members and I'll shoot it off to them. And usually it's just mentioning something that I noticed, right? So if we're on a meeting and they ask a really great question, or that's just one example, right? But they do something and I notice it, right? I'll write it in the card and I'll mail it out to them. One of the favorite things I've done in terms of writing cards is if they have kids, I'll actually write the card to address to their kid and not address to the staff member. And I'll tell the kid about how much daddy or mommy is a superhero at work, and I'll tell them how amazing their mom and dad is, and what they're accomplishing and the impact that they're making. Right? Those are my favorite ones to write. But you guys could be doing this stuff for your clients as well. All right. Those are the 5 rules there. All right, so let's go ahead and recap. All right, number one, right? If we want to be really good at or excuse me, if we want to be really good at 360 leadership, it starts with leading ourselves. Okay, we can't lead others unless we lead ourselves. Rule number two, all right, you must be a source of stability. Okay, rule number three, you must be a good communicator. Rule number four, you must be a fighter. And rule number five, you must show love, empathy, and care. All right, we're gonna go deeper. Whoops. Let me make this bigger for you guys. All right, we're going to go a little bit deeper here on rule number two. Okay, so for rule number two, we talked about being a source of stability. All right, and just really quick little recap here. We talked about when times are good, right? Yes, you want to give praise and recognition, but you also want to raise the standard, right? Raise the belief, raise the accountability, and push the team to the next level, right? It's not a time to pull back and only celebrate. It's a time to celebrate, but also lean into, hey, we got so much more to go, right? What we did is great, but we got so much more room to grow. When times are bad, right, instead of coming down on our team and more or less telling them that they suck, right, we want to focus on motivating, supporting, right, more of the love and the empathy and care. Usually that is what galvanizes the team to get back on track. All right. Now, we also talked about when we view somebody as stable, they make calculated decisions, they follow through consistently and unwaveringly, they are rational and consider other perspectives, and you know what you're going to get. Okay, what we're going to talk about, and I know this is very minute, we're going to talk about just this one thing that I highlighted here. Okay, making calculated decisions. Okay, now this is really important. You guys are business owners. You make a lot of decisions, more decisions than the average person. Okay, in order to make decisions simple and seamless and effective, we need frameworks which we make those decisions within. Okay, if we're just flying off the seat of our pants, making decisions left and right on what we feel, we're not going to have the business that we want. We're not going to have the life that we want. Okay, so I'm going to give you 6 decision making calculuses today. Now, you could choose to use all 6, you can choose to use 1, doesn't matter. Just find the one that you like or the couple that you like, right, and bring them into your decision-making calculus as day to day for the business. Okay, so decision-making calculus number 1, win, win, win decisions. Okay, what is a win-win-win decision? All right, in business, there are really 3 components, okay? We have, and this one's gonna be for you guys in the future, but you have the staff bucket, okay? You have the client bucket, and then you have the business bucket. All right. And in this case, view the business as its own being. When I say the business, I'm not talking about the CEO. I'm talking about the business as its own thing, right? Outside of the CEO, separate from the CEO. It's its own being. Okay. So when we make decisions in our business, typically they affect those 3 categories. They affect the staff, they affect the clients, and they affect the business. Now, for you guys, I know you guys don't have staff yet, right? So this could be a win-win decision, right? But to the best of our ability, we want to make sure that the decision that we are going to make is a win-win-win for all 3 of those buckets: the staff, the clients, and the business. All right. So what does this require? This requires us to ask ourselves, to get introspective and ask ourselves the question, hey, if I make this decision, how does it positively and negatively impact the clients and the business? I'll speak to it being a win-win decision since none of you guys have staff yet, which is fine. All right, so how is it a win? Or excuse me, how is it a positive and a negative for the client if I choose this direction? How is it a positive and a negative for the business? And to the best of your ability, try to make it a win-win for both. Okay, that's decision making calculus number 1. All right, decision making calculus number 2, data and values. All right, remember how we talked about leadership as a dichotomy? This is one of those dichotomies. Okay, so when we make decisions, there are two polar opposites, drawing a blank on the word, two polar, whatever, two polar opposite things that are working against each other. Okay, we have data, which is more the logical side. All right. And then we have our personal values or our business values, which is more the emotional side. All right. Data speaks the truth. It's matter of fact. It can tell a story, but it's never going to tell you the whole story because we're not AI robots yet. we deal with human beings. Okay, so it will tell you a story, but it's not going to tell you the whole story. And lastly, data should always be used when making strategic decisions. Right, on the value side, values are how we behave. Right, we behave in accordance with our values. It fills in the dealing with humans gap. Okay, and it needs to be factored into your strategic decisions as well. All right, so two separate things, have to factor in both when making a decision. Okay, so when you're making decisions, we need the data in order to make the decision. And then we cross check that decision with our values. It has to be aligned with both. It has to be the right data driven decision, but it has to be aligned with our personal values as well. It's not aligned with the personal values. We got to adjust the decision that we are going to make. Okay, so that's decision making calculus number two. All right, how am I doing on time? I'm doing pretty good. All right, decision making calculus number three, type one versus type two decisions. I think this one's going to be groundbreaking for you guys. Now, there's two different types of decisions, type one, type two. Okay, type one decisions are irreversible, meaning if we make the decision, it's very hard to untangle that decision. All right, meaning that we need to take our time with those decisions. Okay, so if you ever find like, man, like, what's the best thing to say here? Well, let me just keep going and then I'll circle back to that. Okay. So, type one are irreversible. We have to take our time with these decisions. So, we have to be able to identify this before we even go down the path, right? Is this a type one? Is this a type two? All right. A type two is reversible, meaning if we make the decision and it doesn't work out, we can always go back and change it, right? These decisions we can move quickly. All right. So, if you feel like this is what I wanted to say. So if you feel like you're a procrastinator, right? If you feel like you're like, oh man, like every single decision that comes across my desk, like I always sit with it for a week, right? You're slowing your business down, right? Speed, success does love speed, right? But we can't make mistakes either. So what this decision making calculus does is it allows you to identify, do I actually need to take my time with this decision? Or can this be something that I just, in literally in a second, just say, hey, let's go this direction, and then if it ends up being the wrong thing, I could just go to option B literally the next day. Okay. So type one versus type two. That's decision making calculus number three. All right. Decision making calculus number four. Would your mom approve of it? Okay. So basically what this one is before you make the decision, ask yourself the question, would your mom approve of it? What does this protect? Okay. This protects your last name, protects your brand. Okay. You only get one brand. One of the bigger mistakes I've made in my career is earlier on in my career, I didn't treat brand very importantly. I really just focused on short term results and I focused on direct marketing. Direct marketing is pretty much you have an ad, you do a call to action, and you book them for a call and you try to sell them, right? And obviously, it's very successful. Direct marketing can be very successful, right? But branding is more long lasting. And when you go through a tough season in business, brand will carry you through. Direct marketing won't always carry you through. Okay, I know that's kind of a side point here, but basically what I'm saying is we want to make decisions that protect our last name. We want to make decisions that protect our brand image. We want to make decisions that protect our program as well, right? Classic example, like we talked about last week. If you sign a shitty client who you know is not going to follow through, but you know is going to pay you, right? If you sign them just for the money, guess what? In the long run, it's almost always going to screw you, right? But if you only sign clients that you know are actually going to follow through, have a genuine interest in making a change, right? Your program is going to be put on a pedestal because you're going to have a very high success rate, right? You're protecting your last name, short term versus long term decisions, right? So before you make the decision, would your mom approve of it? Okay. Decision making calculus number five. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying this. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying this. I know this is a little bit different than our normal conversation, but hopefully, you guys are enjoying this. All right, decision making calculus number five, gun to the head. Okay, gun to the head. All right, this is great for type two decisions. All right, decisions that are reversible. Okay, so gun to the head means this. If you had a gun to your head, what direction would you go? I know it's kind of a more morbid way to look at things, right? Maybe a more intense way of looking at things. But if you had to go one direction or the other, you had a gun to your head, what direction are you going to go? right? You can think about your decisions in this way. Like I said, it's probably best for type 2 decisions, not type 1 decisions. More the types of decisions that you need to make one relatively quickly. But gun to your head, that's decision making calculus number 5. All right, decision making calculus number 6, 80/20. All right, 80/20. Focus on 20% of the actions that yield 80% of the results. All right, another mistake or learning lesson, rather, I should say, in my career is I always prided myself on being a very hard worker. I always prided myself on having an ability to do more in a singular day than what most people could do in a week. And I always kind of hung my hat on that. And trust me, a work ethic like that can get you really far. But at a certain point, you kind of hit a plateau, right? And that depends on the individual skill set. And that plateau is like, sure, you're getting a lot done, right? But how far is the needle moving on the stuff that you're actually focusing on? Right? So that's what this decision making calculus is. This is better when you're trying to decide what you need to do in a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year, right? And at least in my career, I've been trying to shorten that list more and more and more, right? In the beginning, my goal was to make the list as long as I could because man, that's how I kind of identified myself, and I would get all the dopamine hits from fucking crossing that thing off over and over and over again. But like I said, it hits a plateau. So my as I've matured and I'm trying to give you guys this now before you run into the same mistake that I did, I've tried to shorten that list. So sure, maybe I start with a long list, but then I ask myself what actually has the greatest leverage. And I cross off all the things that don't, and I focus on the things that do. Focus on the 20% of actions that get 80% of the results. All right, y'all. That is everything I had for today. Once again, we talked about the 5 keys to leadership, and then we went deeper on stability, right? Being viewed as a stable person. And then we went even deeper, more specifically, on decision making calculuses. Why? Because stable individuals make calculated decisions, and they do that consistently by having actual frameworks in which they make those decisions through.